Greetings friends, my name is Opti, and welcome to another Mythology 101 episode, a series dedicated to bringing you the tools you need to be your own mythologist. Today we're going to put ourselves up to what will be the most important task we are going to tackle on this channel, which is crafting our own definition of mythology. This video is going to set the tone and the focus for the rest of the channel, so anytime we start to apply our myth theories to any myths we analyze, it will be based on the definitions that we build here today. This video represents our atom, our irreducible unit composed of inner working parts, with which we will build our understanding in an ever-expanding, outward look at mythology. We're going to do just a quick review of a few things that we've talked about in other videos to help build an understanding of this video's goal. If you want more information about those topics, I recommend go checking out my previous two videos, and that'll help give a little bit of a further background into why we're doing this definition. Then I'll present to you the definition of mythology that I would like to use for the duration of this channel before explaining my reasoning. First off, if you haven't watched any of my previous videos, one consistent point I stress on is the variety of definitions available to the burgeoning myth student who is just starting out. There is no singular definition of mythology. How a mythologist defines what a myth is, and therefore what its study entails, is always influenced by that particular mythologist's background. For example, a psychologist's background might have them focus on the ways that myth and psyche interact with each other, while a riteological scholar will focus on how a particular culture's physical enactments of their myths, their rites and rituals, influences the individual as well as the greater society they represent. In fact, in our last video, we explored a handful of definitions and examined their strengths and weaknesses, as well as how they reflect their particular mythologist's mindset. And in the video before that, we talked about how dictionary definitions they're fine, in everyday conversations, but ultimately they need to be transcended if we're going to get into myth studies proper. And all of this can be really frustrating to the myth scholar who is just starting out and reading a whole bunch of conflicting ideas and theories. It means there's no solid ground to stand on. So there's no universal agreed upon definition of mythology, or methods of practice and theoretical application. But for our purposes on this channel, we need to create some sort of common ground for all of us to stand upon. Otherwise, we'll spend too much time chasing definitional arguments and not enough time mythologizing. My goal with our definition is to create something that's specific enough to rule out mythology as just the study of stories that often leads us to anecdotal interpretations, but broad enough to encompass all the different viewpoints that myth studies pulls from. No easy task, but I think I've managed to come up with something that will suffice. Mythology. For the course of the rest of this channel, we will define as the study of narrative, pictorial, or performative systems of symbols expressed through story that reflect long-running collective human experiences in both the individual and in greater humanity. Simple as that. Now, let's break this down even further into some easy-to-chew parts. Narrative, pictorial, or performative just means that a myth can be written, spoken, drawn, or performed, or any combination of these. So it can be, but is not limited to, things like books, novellas, spoken stories, a play or a drama. In animation, music, hieroglyphs, comics, pottery, paintings, video games, and so on, since all of these things contain the aforementioned creative elements. A system of symbols expressed through a story is probably the vaguest part of this definition because symbols can be just about anything. But simply put, symbols are the individual, tangible elements of a myth, like characters, objects, physical acts, plot points, or settings that mean something greater than themselves. For example, a god may be a character in a story, yes, but a god's presence in a story can allude to something more. They can represent elements of nature like lightning or the sun and moon, or abstract human concepts like heroism or death. So it's not just that the gods, heroes, monsters, visual symbols, cosmogonic events, and so on exist in a story. It's what they represent about human experience, belief, and nature. Reflecting long-running collective human experiences is the one that adds the solid ground to stand on. Myths are not singular experiences made into one-off stories. Instead, myths reflect common thoughts, beliefs, and experiences, like coming of age, birth, death, religious or cultural ideas, or experiences of nature. These experiences happen in both the individual and greater humanity. So while myths can and do reflect personal experiences, they also reflect tribal, geographical, national, communal, biological, and even globally felt phenomena, while also interweaving all of these different levels of society with one another. For the mythologist, myths aren't just written stories, but stories told in any medium that reflect all the things humans have collectively experienced, believed, or contemplated about the world around us over a long period of time. Just, in allegorical form. I think this definition does a decent job of setting up boundaries. It shows that myths are not just written stories, but stories from any medium. It sets forth that while myths have the surface level elements of the story itself to consider, those elements may also lead us to some deeper part of human experience through the symbolic effort of the myth maker. So it makes it so that not any old story is a myth, but ones that deal with things we experience time and time again. We're looking at cultural patterns that large groups of people experience that persist over time. And this definition also solves one of the biggest issues I have with definitions of myth and mythology. It's that myths are not relegated to the past. Myths are a product in the making that change over time to meet the needs of its society. Myths are not relics of the past, they are here with us now, and we are potentially steeped in them every time we pick up a book, watch a movie, or grab a controller. But because we've never given myth studies its serious due, we've lost the ability to perceive the undercurrents within myths. We take them at their face value and draw from them immediately relevant conclusions, rather than the grander, more consequential ones. We're going to study and employ a great deal of different approaches to mythology, and this proposed definition will allow us to utilize any and all approaches to adjust our lenses to just the right level, so we can really dig into the core of the vast ocean of myths. And while this video and its encapsulated definition is only the start, I'm excited to explore the world of mythology with you. Because while I'm sure your definitions of mythology might not be quite this idea of how to approach mythology that I presented here can still include the many ways different people look at myths that I'm sure will emerge as this channel goes on. That's all for now though. Remember to subscribe and follow me on other social media channels for more videos in the future. And I actually, as of this video, I started uploading small little bits of myth discussions, conversations, observations. I don't really know what to call them, but basically little bits of mythologizing on my Instagram. So if you want more consistent myth content that's a little bit more bite-sized, feel free to pop over there and give me a follow. Also, I post cat pics too, so that's cool. Also be sure to drop by the Twitch channel and join in on our monthly charity streams. Each month I pick a different charity, and for every single one of our streams we're always raising funds for that charity, and then I do fun, challenging streams based on how much we raise. But in the end, I submit this to you, that mythology is mercurial. Grip it too hard and it slips through your fingers. Hold it too lightly and it can escape you. To be a mythologist means opening yourself up to the ebb and the flow of the myths we study. While a keen, trained eye and some degree of analysis is needed, it's also important that we feel these myths as well. And with that, I think we can begin to mythologize, to study and craft and create myths. The last few videos have been to help break down preconceived notions of myth studies to help make way for a new way of looking at myths. There's so much more for us to learn, but I think this is a good starting point. In fact, what if we took our first look at a new age myth? One that involves monsters, big weapons, and a surprising cosmos for us to explore. Until then, my friends, Be safe, be well, and be loved.